All right, welcome back to Campus Pressbox, podcast number 34. Once again, today I am joined by our SEC 411 host, Seth Merenbloom, who joins me from Champion City out there in Kansas City or wherever you are out there for today's show. But Seth, how are we doing today?
Good. How are you?
I can't complain. It's actually cooled off. I think my car said it was 65 degrees out here. So, I think the last time we saw 65 was this time last year. So, it's all good. Yeah. It's not 1,000 degrees, so it's all good. All right, Seth, we have a bunch of stuff to talk about today, but the first thing, let's talk about this college football playoff poll that came out yesterday. The top four being Clemson, and then LSU, Ohio State, and then the fourth spot was Alabama. And I think 5 was Notre Dame and 6 was Baylor, correct? Correct. So, thoughts? What do you think? Do you agree with it? Not agree with it? Where are you at?
I think, for what? We're November 4th, is it?
Yeah.
All right. So November 4th, it's the first playoff poll of the season. It's basically worthless in the grand scheme of things. There will be a lot of changes to those top four spots between today and the end of the season. So I think a lot of these fan bases who are getting all worked up about it, they need to just take a step back, take a deep breath, sit down with their favorite drink and just cool it. I think the biggest outrage that I've sensed on Twitter anyway is Alabama being in the top four. It's the great conspiracy. Why is Alabama there? They've lost. They aren't that good this year. It just isn't fair. That's the rhetoric that I've been reading. The Campus Pressbox top 10 that we've been doing for the past couple of weeks leading into this. I'm sure all of the listeners have faithfully read that, and since they have faithfully read that, they know that the number one team in my top 10 is Alabama. I don't care that they've lost to somebody. I don't care how bad that loss may or may not appear. I think right now they are playing the best football in the country. Now, with that said, it's that the top four, it's going to start working itself out here really quick. And by really quick, I mean this Saturday, because LSU and Alabama play each other, and one of those teams is guaranteed to lose. So, one of those teams this time next week is no longer going to be in the top four. So if Alabama is truly the fraud that social media claims that they are, well, LSU will take care of them. No problem at all. I think in terms of that the Alabama ranking, the LSU ranking, the SEC bias that everybody is clamoring on about. Ole Miss, they took care of Alabama, and they also took care of LSU. I think, didn't they, or have they not played LSU yet?
I don't think they've played LSU yet.
Yeah, they haven't. So Ole Miss has played Alabama. They beat Alabama. Ole Miss is nowhere close to the top four right now. I'm saying nowhere close because if you're not in the top four, I don't care if you're 5 or 6, you're nowhere close, because it's just the top four that's going to matter. So I think Ole Miss, not being in the top four and Alabama being there, I think the team that's being slighted by the committee in all of that is Memphis, because Memphis took care of Ole Miss, and Memphis isn't a bad football team. Fuente can coach his butt off. He has that team playing well. He had that team playing well last year as well. And to not rank Ole Miss higher than they are, especially in relation to having beat Bama, I think that's a big middle finger to Fuente and his Memphis program.
Yeah, no. And you know what, when you made the reference to, the Campus Pressbox poll that we've been doing, I'm with you. Alabama's been my number one since the beginning. And when I take a look at these other teams that, like you said, the Twitter sphere is all up in arms about, with Baylor, Michigan State, TCU, and Iowa, all undefeated, but outside the top four. My eyes tell me, and I'm just a big eye test guy, and I could put Alabama up against any one of those teams, and I think Alabama's coming out on top. And so for me, that, and people can talk to me, all day about Baylor, God, they're putting 60 points on the board. And even I was there a few weeks ago. I'm like, God, they are just pasting everybody, but they haven't played anybody yet. But that's going to, like you said, it's going to work itself out because the Big 12 is that schedule is so backloaded. Oklahoma, Baylor, TCU, and Oklahoma State, they all play each other. It's going to be their version of a round robin tournament between those four teams. And so the whole Baylor thing and TCU aspect of it in the next few weeks is just going to work itself out. And I'm with you. People just need to, what Aaron Rodgers said, relax.
Yeah, well, with that round robin tournament, the de facto round robin tournament that's going to start the Big 12. I'm not going to call it a round robin tournament because I think those teams are pretty much all frauds because I think the Big 12 is a fraud. Yes, I have extreme anti-Big 12 bias. I mean, I think instead of calling it a round robin tournament, let's just call it something like a thieving Magpie tournament because, someone's just trying to steal their way into one of those top four playoff spots. And if it happens, they just don't belong there. And there is no doubt in my mind that whether it's Baylor or TCU or Oklahoma State or Oklahoma, let's keep Oklahoma out of it because they lost to Texas. If it's any of those other three schools, I'm pretty confident that they will be exposed when they go up against, whichever playoff team they have to go up against.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what have we talked about? I mean, Michigan State, they're 10 seconds from being 7-1. TCU, once again, hasn't played anybody. Iowa hasn't played anybody, and they're not going to play anybody until they get to the Big Ten championship. Baylor, half their team takes a playoff every play. And like you said, if and when they get in there, they're going to be exposed by a Clemson team or LSU or Alabama or Ohio State, maybe even Notre Dame if they get in there, So the Big 12, I don't know if you said this or maybe Damian did, I don't know, but they are their own worst enemy right now.
That sounds like a Damian comment.
They can't get out of the way of themselves. When it comes to this, we're being disrespected or we haven't, The message that I got and a lot of people got yesterday from this ranking was that strength of schedule matters. I mean, I take a look at it. Baylor hasn't played anybody yet. I mean, they will, but up till now they hadn't played anybody. And these other teams with their out of conference gather, they're probably not the greatest, but they're not playing, what Baylor did, like what North Texas,
right,
and Little Sisters of the Poor JV squad.
Well, here's the thing, Mike, with the strength of schedule component. For the teams that we're dissecting, they. At most they have one, maybe two losses, but I think they all just have the one loss if they're not undefeated. And just because Team A has one loss and Team B has 0 losses, that does not mean that the team with the one loss is not better than that undefeated team, because unless your team has just this string of losses, having a singular loss is merely a snapshot in time. That's all it is. It's not necessarily indicative of who you truly are. So I think that's where that strength of schedule component really comes into play, and that's what it highlights.
And I'm looking at the poll right now, and I'm looking at Stanford. Stanford 7-1. They had the opening week loss in Northwestern. Like you said last week on our podcast, they had the huevos to schedule a legit away game, to start the season against a Power 5 school on their turf, not not down in Dallas or in Detroit or, anywhere else they want to play those type of games, but it was legitly on the road. If I could take Stanford against any one of those, Baylor, Michigan State, TCU, Iowa, I could make the argument that Stanford would beat all of them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right.
I don't disagree with that. And if
would you say? Let me ask you this real quick. Would you say the same thing about Florida? Like could you make the argument that Florida could beat the Iowa, TCU, Baylor, Michigan State, squads?
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't. I want to see Florida, really, really play somebody and really beat somebody. So I'm just not that impressed with Florida. But to go back to Stanford for a moment, there are all these people that think that Iowa is getting slighted. Well, if you think Iowa's getting slighted, then that also means that those same people highly value the Big Ten. And yes, if those people are going to highly value the Big Ten, then that loss to Northwestern that Stanford had at the beginning of the year just keeps looking better and better.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely on that. So, I mentioned this before we went on air that, Stanford's in a good spot. They're at 11. They're just on the outside. I mean, if they don't get to the playoff, they're in one of what those New Year's Six bowls or, whatever that they call it. But if Stanford, to me, in the Pac-12 right now is playing the best ball right now. And I think they're a better overall squad right now than even Utah. And they're both 11 and 12. So they're just, if either one of those teams wins out, they're going to be just fine. In my big thing this year was like, man, there could be a Pac-12 team. The Pac-12 could get shut out of the playoff, like legitly, because it is a dog eat dog kind of conference.
They will get shut out of the playoff if Stanford loses to Notre Dame.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the game that will determine if the Pac-12 gets in the tourney. Yeah.
And then if that happens, that opens the door for any of those schmoes from the Big 12 to get their foot in the door, and that's where a really interesting conversation would begin to take place. If the Pac-12 plays their way out of this thing, and you're looking at one of these Big 12 teams and you are comparing them to, say, Memphis. Let's assume that Memphis continues to run the table and they have that win against Ole Miss also. And it's not like it was a last second win. I don't believe. I think that there are going to be some very heated conversations about, does Memphis belong in that playoff spot, or does that half-assed Big 12 team belong there?
Yeah. Yeah. What would, if you're on the committee, Memphis wins out, what do you do?
Yeah. And because I'd have to see their schedule, but,
yeah.
But, will they have played anybody that dilutes their schedule to the point that a Kansas or Iowa State does for the Big 12?
True.
I would be very interested to see a comparison to strength of schedule at the end of the year for Memphis compared to those Big 12 teams like the TCU and Baylor in particular.
Yeah, and here's the thing with TCU and the especially Baylor. I mean, this is what I heard with Baylor. Baylor's strength of schedule ranks like it's like 108th or 109th.
Yeah.
Right now, but because the schedule is so backloaded, their strength of schedule goes to like 9 later in the year, and I'm sitting there going, okay, well, yeah, I mean, if it's backloaded, of course it's going to be stronger, but does that mean if they run the table, they still deserve to get in. I don't know if I'm there anymore with Baylor, getting in, regardless if they run the table.
I haven't been all season, but that's me. And everybody that's listened to the couple of podcasts that I've done with you and Damien on here is aware of that. When I hop on, Dorf on Sports on Sunday mornings, I've beat my anti-Baylor rhetoric into the ground there as well. So they're just kind of my whipping boy right now.
Yeah, and they might be everybody's whipping boy, seeing how just however this thing plays itself out. But so you're not too impressed with Florida. What is it with Florida? I mean, the SEC a lot better than I do, but what is it with Florida that you could explain to me and anybody that's kind of an outsider to the conference as to why maybe they don't get to the playoff if they win out, or those type of things?
All right, let me first say the job that McElvain has done there has been remarkable. I mean, it's not.
I would agree.
It's not like he turned around a winless program, but to do what he's done in his first year with the quarterback situation that presented itself a few weeks ago when Greer got himself suspended. I want to say that there may have been some issues at running back as well for him. He's done a phenomenal job, based on how that Florida program was playing for Will Muschamp the past couple of years. But they're playing in the SEC East. They beat a Missouri team who has just a phenomenal damn defense right now, but they can't string 2 first downs together on offense. They played a Georgia team that I don't know. I guess they're a little bit better than Missouri, but when I watched Georgia play Missouri, those teams, neither one of them really looked good. So I'm not so sure how good they really are based on who they've had to play and who they've beaten. Now, if they get to the SEC championship game and they take on Alabama, LSU, or Ole Miss, and they really stick it to them, based on what I think of Alabama and LSU and what a lot of people think of Ole Miss, if they beat them, they have a real argument to get in. But I'm not sure it actually happens. Now, since we are talking about the SEC and the SEC East, I don't know, Mike, if you multitask when you podcast the way that I do. Do you?
I try.
All right. Are you on Twitter by any chance right now?
I can be. Yeah.
All right. Well, here's where I'm going with this. The breaking news in the SEC, based on maybe 10 minutes ago, has to do with Georgia. I don't know how you pronounce this kid's name that Georgia's been playing at quarterback. Peyton Bada. But
yeah.
I mean, he's been controversial because of the lack of the quality of play that he's shown. Well, Richt, it sounds like from numerous sources, played him at safety at Georgia's practice today and had punter Bryce Ramsey getting reps at quarterback.
What?
Yes. If this is true, things are so much worse at Georgia than anybody possibly imagined. They're either so much worse, or Rick truly is feeling more heat under his butt than people truly realize, and he is just in panic mode.
He is in. To me, that says panic mode. When you start putting players that don't play the position and you're trying to find a combination that maybe works, or something that, let's try this or let's try that. Yeah, you're in. I think that seat's pretty damn hot for him right now.
Yeah. So, when Florida's beating this Georgia program and, this Missouri program, for the right to win the SEC East, I think that begins to build context around Florida.
Yeah, that has to. Wow. man, he's. You said the punter back at safety.
No, the punter back at quarterback and the quarterback at safety.
Oh, okay. Wow, man. That's to me, that's panic mode.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you can put with that and convince me that it's not. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I am seeing this from one guy after another reporting this on Twitter now. So there's that.
Wow. Rick has sent Twitterverse into a tailspin. Holy smokes. Let me ask you this, since, we've been talking about the poll and we got 2 SEC teams in the top 4 for this week. It won't be that way next week probably, but who wins the big game, LSU or Alabama?
I have to go with Alabama. Not because I think they're the best team in the country right now, but they have one of the top defenses in the country right now. I think Alabama stands a better chance of containing Fournette, and by containing, I mean Fournette could still run for 130 yards. I think Alabama's defense stands a better chance of containing Fournette than LSU's defense stands in containing Derrick Henry. That's part of it. The other part of it is I think we can count on. It's easier to count on what Coker is going to do at the quarterback position for Alabama than what we can count on from Harris at quarterback for LSU. Now, having said that, I'll reiterate something that I said somewhere along the line to somebody, I don't remember who now, but what Cam Cameron has done at LSU as their offensive coordinator this year and manufacturing production out of Harris at the quarterback position is just downright extraordinary to me. Maybe he has a few tricks up his sleeve that he hasn't shown yet, and maybe he manufactures a little bit more out of Harris against Alabama, and it puts him over the top. It wouldn't completely shock me, but if I'm betting on this game, I'm taking Alabama.
Yeah. Just from my perspective, the outsider looking in, to me, just that defense that Saban has going right now is just locking down. And it's just that typical hard-nosed Saban, I'm just gonna stop you kind of defense. And you're right with the quarterbacks. Not that Coker lights the world on fire or anything like that, but I tend to trust him more. Mm-hmm. And this may seem a little weird, but I think Kiffin in his role with Alabama, I trust his role a little bit more because what he has to work with. And, and it's just one of those things where Kiffin's more of a known quantity to me and Saban's a known quantity to me. And I just know what I'm going to get, for the most part every week. So, I'm going to roll tide with this game. Now, what, go ahead. You got something.
I don't, for me, it isn't even that. I just think from top to bottom, Alabama has higher quality players, up and down their roster. That's not meant as a slight to LSU because LSU is LSU. They have plenty of quality players themselves. They, in all likelihood, have the Heisman Trophy winner playing for them as well with Leonard Fournette. But, give me the team that has, the better Jimmies and Joes, so to speak. And then you take a team like that and you put the coaching on top of it. That's tough. I don't know how many fake field goals and fake punts, Les Miles is going to have up his sleeve against Alabama. Maybe that pushes him over the edge.
Maybe,
but, I wouldn't necessarily expect it. And I think this could be just one of those really just down and dirty, ugly old SEC football games where we're looking at like 13-10 or 13-12 or, some other cockamamie type of score.
But for me, that's what I'm thinking it's going to be. I'm thinking like a 17-14, maybe 21-14 kind of 21-16 kind of game. But yeah, I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but I would love it if it was just like that SEC pouring down rain and you gotta run the ball and just get down muddy and dirty and just hammer on each other for 60 minutes and just see who's on the top of the mountain.
Is this a CBS game? Do you know?
I would think it is.
Let's see. I'm checking it out now.
You know what? No, I think game day is there, and I don't think they're gonna.
It is CBS.
Oh, it is. Wow. Okay.
Yes. So knowing that it's CBS, we're gonna have Waldorf and Statler up there in the press box for CBS, also known as Vern Lundquist and Gary Danielson. I mean, that's enough to push Alabama over the top because if anybody needs a cup adjusted or anything like that, old Gary's going to be right down there to take care of business.
That's true. That's true because he didn't read the fine print in his contract when he signed it, but that was part of the contract.
Right. I told you I was in a mood before we started.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay. We're talking about adjusting cups, people. We're talking about adjusting cups. All right.
Waldorf and Statler.
Waldorf and Statler. Okay. Now, getting off of the poll, let's talk about the other crazy thing that happened on Saturday, and that was the Duke Miami ending with the 8 laterals. Holy crap. I remember seeing the score for the game, and then I was like, okay, well, it sounds like Duke's going to win it, whatever. It's a Duke Miami game. Not that it, rings clicks my radar or anything like that anymore. But just seeing that and just seeing the whole controversy with it, what are your thoughts with it?
Well, I mean, that last play had everything but, someone spiking the marching band trombone player in the end zone.
Yeah.
It had everything except for that. It was an incredible play that Miami pulled off to win the game. There were penalties and illegalities all over it. So that incredible play, should have been all for naught. Referees miss plays, miss calls all the time. That's not my issue with how that all went down. My issue with it was the replay system.
Yep.
They took 9 minutes or like 9.5 minutes to review that. And they found nothing to overturn any of it. One, it shouldn't take 9 minutes. Two, if it does take 9 minutes and you still get the play wrong, what damn use is the replay mechanism? Just stop using it. And we've seen this quite a bit this year and last year. I feel like that there have been some really questionable calls. I know the Ohio State Penn State game comes to mind from last year.
Yeah.
So this isn't just about the ACC. It's not about any one individual conference. It's just about officiating and the replay environment in general. If you're going to use the replay, get it right. And if you're going to use it and you're not going to get it right, then just stop using it and go back to the old way of doing it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, my whole thing was, okay, they looked at it, and I'm going to be almost repeating what you said here, but they looked at it for 9 freaking minutes. Like what, I mean, and the Miami player's knee was down on the, I don't know, 4th or 5th lateral, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. But, how do you not stop? I'm sure they stopped, but how do you not see that his knee's down and he still has control of the ball? And then, like you said, they miss plays all the time, but if you're going to use this system and everybody doesn't want to be on the short end of the stick on a call that replay, could fix. But if replay can't fix it because they're too stupid, and they can't see it on the screen. I mean, my whole issue is with that replay official. Dear God, that guy should be fired. If he hasn't been already. I mean, the guys on the ground are they're looking to him to communicate the message on, is the score good? Is it not? Is the knee down? Whatever it is. But it's on that guy. That guy, I mean, the officiating crew, they were suspended for 2 games. And then I don't know if that extends to the replay official here or not. I mean, I'm assuming it probably does. But that guy, to me, he needs to be fired.
Well, and here's something else with it, Mike. Great. The officials are suspended for a game or 2.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change what has become the fact that Duke has a check mark in the loss column. Miami has a check mark in the win column. So really, suspending these referees for any number of games really just amounts to the league and whoever the head of officiating is saying to Duke, oops, my bad. And I'm gonna go back to Bobby Knight's comment when a player walked off the court in the game and said, my bad. He's like, yeah, I know it's your bad. You don't have to tell me that.
Yeah. There's no reason.
Don't do it again. Fix it.
Yeah. Jeez. I mean, they missed 2 blocks in the back. They missed the knee down. I mean, it was insane in terms of what the referees on the field missed. And then, God, I mean, I just repeated myself. I mean, it's even more egregious that the guy in the replay booth who can slow things down, freeze frame things for 9 minutes, for 540 seconds went, yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah,
it's
good. I had somebody say to me, well, all of us fans have the luxury of seeing it in high definition, in HD. It's like, well, yeah, but so does the replay official.
Yeah, so does he. That's no excuse.
Right. I mean, it seems like that it was a case of the referees on the field getting caught up in the moment, which is completely unprofessional, but they're human. It's going to happen. So, the replay mechanism kicks in, and it's almost like the guy in the booth, in the replay booth, didn't want to get in the way of this moment that Miami just had and just let it stand.
See, and that was one of my thoughts over the weekend with that. I'm like, he just didn't want to rain on the parade, even though that parade that shouldn't have happened. And you're there to be the equalizer, to say, no, that was wrong. The knee was down, or the blood, he stepped out of bounds, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. You're there to be the arbitrator, to be the person that says, nope, they did this, they did that, no touchdown, or it's a touchdown, or whatever the circumstance may be. And that guy didn't do it. That guy, I don't know. Like I said, to me, that guy needs to be fired. You can do whatever else with the rest of the crew, but to me, that guy should be like, no, you can't watch TV appropriately. I mean, that's I mean, that's what he's doing. That's all that dude is doing, is watching TV. And then, like we do with our DVRs, slow it down, rewind, fast forward. Okay, the knee's down. Nope, that touchdown's good. I got it. What the hell, dude? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's literally, they can tell him, you don't know how to watch TV right. I mean,
go back to preschool. Let's figure this out.
Exactly. So, you have all that. And have you seen the shirt that Miami has brought out with it?
I don't believe so.
It's pretty good. They got all these arrows going 8 different ways, and it's called like the play, like that. I'm sitting there going, man, I'm tempted to get online and buy that, just so But bottom line, it shouldn't have happened. The play shouldn't have stood.
Right.
Duke should have got the win. Miami should have went back to South Beach, and with their tail between their legs with a loss, and and that's the end of it. But man, it was, I will give you this, and you brought it up. It just was one of those moments. And bottom line, I think we'd both agree that the guy that just got caught up, didn't want to rain on the parade, and just figured, I'll just let it stand. Not that it's that simple, but I mean that's from outsider's point of view.
The simplest explanation is usually the accurate one.
Yeah, exactly. So, moving on from, Miami and Duke, hey, we got a coach up there at Virginia Tech that's calling it quits after what he's been there since the Middle Ages.
It's Damien's favorite coach.
It is D's favorite coach, and I don't know who he's going to talk about anymore.
He'll find someone. He'll
figure out somebody.
I don't know. Maybe if he doesn't find somebody, I can fill the void with my apparent hatred of Mike Riley.
Hatred of Mike Riley. I don't know if anybody can hate Mike Riley, but
I know he's a nice guy.
He is a nice guy, but he's the nice version of Pelini. He's not going to get you any more than what Pelini gave you.
Well, this may need further explanation, but the person that I compared Mike Riley to in the hiring of Mike Riley was a couple of years ago, Missouri basketball hiring Kim Anderson. He's just such a nice guy. His players will all say please and thank you. The players will take their hats off in the presence of a woman and hold the door open for him and everything, But they're gonna go out there and not really win a whole lot and have some embarrassing losses and give
it the old college try,
right? Airball some layups, but gosh darn it, those coaches are just so darn nice.
Yeah. You know what? Coaches can be nice, but coaches have to win.
Right. You get paid to win.
Exactly. That's why they make a little bit of good money.
Yeah. So back to Beamer.
Back to Beamer. Little sidetrack. Here we go. But what are your takeaways with Beamer's career?
It was solid. I think in all likelihood he's a Hall of Fame coach. I don't recall Virginia Tech doing a whole lot before he got there. He's had the kind of the moniker of, being the special teams guru. Virginia Tech, I think even when they were bad, they still seemed to be competitive. Granted, I never followed Virginia Tech football, that closely, but, it seemed like he never had that team in embarrassing moments. He never had himself in embarrassing moments, at least during a football game. We can all think of a couple of memes and GIFs that are out there that, paint him in a comical light. But, he was a professional. I think that's probably the best way to describe him. Very similar to Bill Snyder at Kansas State, I think.
Very much. Yeah.
I have my issues with Bill Snyder, but I live in the geographic area, so I hear, considerably more stuff about Bill Snyder than I do Frank Beamer and Virginia Tech. Maybe if I lived closer to Virginia Tech and Frank Beamer's program, maybe I know a little bit more about the cobwebs and skeletons in his closet, but I don't. But I think they're probably comparable coaches.
Yeah, no, I would agree. A very solid career. Like we were just saying, nice guys, he seemed like a pretty affable individual. I never heard anything, living out here on the West Coast, but, you never hear anything negative about Beamer. His teams were, for the most part, fairly solid. Would you agree with that? It wasn't like they weren't like 0-12 or 1-10 or, something like that. But they had a couple of good years. They had, they had some solid years with Michael Vick there. Damien makes a big deal out of, staying somewhere more than 10 years. And obviously Beamer was there. He was there 35 years or.
Yeah, it seems like that. 26 maybe.
Yeah, something like that. Is Beamer and his kind that stay there forever, like the Paternos and the, those kind of people? Is that like a dying breed?
Yeah, and I'm going to back up a step with
Sure.
with Damien's, with the article that Damien wrote. I think he published it this morning about kind of the 10-year rule. I agree with it. I wouldn't.
do too.
I mean, if I was an AD, I wouldn't necessarily be pushing a guy out the door at year 10 or going into year 11. But if I was a coach, maybe I'd be thinking, all right, maybe I need a new challenge. I mean, Joe Paterno being at Penn State as long as he was, that was just a completely different era. Somebody like Beamer, or Bill Snyder or Mark Richt. Oops, or Gary Pinkel. I mean, there are a handful of coaches that have been at their current programs for more than 10 years. And I really do think things begin to get stale. I mean, if they want to stick around and they haven't done anything embarrassing and they're kind of winning, I can see where it would be difficult for an AD to fire the guy. So I'm not necessarily advocating for that. What I'm advocating for is the decision to be a one that's made by the individual coach. I would applaud that. Because after 10 years, I think a change is good for everybody.
Yeah, no. And, everybody knows, I went to Oregon State and, proud alumni of that school and the whole bit. Riley was there for 2 stints, but combined, he was there for, going on 14 years, 15 years, something like that. And things got, like you said, things got stale. Sometimes the program just needs a different point of view, a breath of fresh air, and just a different kind of enthusiasm brought to it. And maybe, depending on which way Virginia Tech goes, and I haven't heard any names being well, okay, I take that back. The one name that I have heard.
Say it. Say it. Yeah.
Rich Rod.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a different name.
Who'd you think?
What I've read in an albeit limited capacity, I've read that Kirby Smart is legitimately interested in that
Wow.
job.
Kirby, okay.
Yeah.
Does he have connections back there? Is he from the area or something?
I honestly don't know, but it seems like for the past 5 to 8 years, he's been connected to, every coaching job out there, and he's seemed very content, and I think rightfully so, just to stay put at Alabama. So, I kind of thought at this point, it's kind of like that boy who cries wolf. These programs realize, well, even if we show interest in him, he's staying at Alabama, so we're not going down that road. But maybe this truly is the opportunity that he jumps at.
Yeah, that would make sense. And I've heard that Beamer would like to just hand the program off to his coach in waiting or his associate head coach that he has there now. Mm-hmm. And then, just talking, just hearing people talk out here about Rich Rod and just how things have kind of gone south on Arizona this year in terms of they're not even close in games anymore. It's just disgusting. But that he, being from and coaching at West Virginia, that he may want to get out of Tucson and head back, to where he went to school. Maybe I think he's from the area anyways, that he might want to go back there. But, who knows? We're still 6 weeks, 7 or 5 weeks from the end of the season. But, Kirby Smart makes more sense to me than Rich Rod would.
What? How so? Or why?
I just don't see Rich Rod just leaving town just because he's maybe going to have just an average year. He's dealt with injuries. Scooby has been hurt a lot this year. He's had defensive tackles, defensive ends that have been bitten by the injury bug. So I just don't see it happening. Maybe if it was after a couple more years and Beamer retires and Rich Rod has had some very average years or maybe, losing season, then I could see him maybe jumping and wanting to leave or just being told, hey, why don't you go find another place to coach kind of thing. But
I lost you.
You lost me.
Yeah. All right. I hear you now.
You hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's like a Verizon commercial.
Yeah.
There we go. But no other reason other than I just don't see Rich Rod leaving Tucson right now.
All right. Let me ask you a what if question. All right.
Sure.
Here, let me steal that host hat from you.
Okay.
Let me ask you a what if question, because they're arguably in the same geographic area. If Richt decides to leave or is fired from Georgia, which job in its current state of the program do you think is better, Virginia Tech or Georgia?
Ooh, man.
Where do you think you can win?
That's a good question. My head would say Georgia, just because it seemed like they would have the better athletes, better recruiting classes than Virginia Tech. But I don't know.
But do you think it's easier to? Do you think it's easier for Georgia to win the SEC and pave their way to the college playoff in some future season, or do you think it's easier for Virginia Tech, or more likely that Virginia Tech is in a position where they can win the ACC and get themselves
like year after year almost? Yeah.
Well, not even year after year, even if it's just one time. Which team do you think would have an easier path?
I would say if that's a scenario there, I would say Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, because the ACC is just not as strong as the SEC. I mean, the SEC is like the Pac-12 to me. Like they eat each other.
Yeah,
that's like playing King of the Hill there. So the ACC not being as strong as the SEC, it would put Virginia Tech in that boat of they would have the easier path to get to the playoff and do some damage. So I mean, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I agree with that. And I mean, I think because of the jobs that are currently opened and the jobs that, may potentially open up, like Georgia, I think it would behoove the powers that be at Virginia Tech to get their guy lined up and sign on the dotted line as soon as possible.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Because even if it's, an existing sitting head coach somewhere else, they don't actually have to necessarily talk to him. They just talk to the agent. I mean, they can have the whole thing wrapped up. So when that other coach's season ends, man, they could basically immediately say, I'm off to Virginia Tech now.
Oh yeah. And for the longest time, the coach can just say, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You take care of it. I mean, and then that's how the coaches can say that these days. I mean, they have their agent and the school take care of everything behind the scenes. And, the coach can legitimately say, I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard anything, Let me ask you this, staying on the SEC,
mm-hmm.
How long does Saban stay? Because I heard some stuff today.
All right, well, I haven't heard the stuff. So before you tell me the stuff, I'll tell you my opinion of that without knowing the stuff. And then you can tell me the stuff and I'll reserve the right to change my opinion based on the stuff.
There you go. All right.
He stays there as long as he wants to.
Yeah.
I mean, he is at no risk of ever only winning 6 games a season or 7 games a season. And even if he does, he's Nick Saban, so the chances are he's going to rebound rather dramatically from a crap season like that. But I say what is he early 60s?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I would say he's there another 8 years.
8 years. Okay.
Not without knowing the stuff.
Now, without knowing the stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I had heard, I was listening to some talk radio today, that if the situation is right for him, and if the quarterback situation is right for him, that he would go back to the NFL.
No way.
Now, okay.
He's got it made in Tuscaloosa.
He does have it made. Now, what is the one NFL job? I mean, this is almost morphing into an NFL podcast, but what's the one NFL job that's probably going to come open that's going to have a quality quarterback?
Indianapolis?
There you go. That he would do everything and that he would not that he would take it, but that he would listen.
All right. Well,
and the listening would be negotiations they said would be in the $10 to $12 million range,
which isn't that much more than he's making at Alabama.
Exactly.
Because I mean, let's be honest, Mike. Working.
I just found it interesting. I was like, oh.
You always listen, even if you aren't looking. If someone comes up to you, you always listen, even if it is just for a minute or two. You always listen. So he'll listen. Right. And as much as he makes at Alabama, if they thought it was the thing to do or that they wanted to do it, they'd put another $1 million on his contract there and he'd be worth it. Yeah.
I just thought, when I heard that, I was like, ooh, I wonder what Seth would think about this, because I could see him. I mean, like you say, you always listen. And if it's something you want to do and you're Saban and you got the credentials that he does, and if you want to do it, you do it. I mean, because you're guaranteed to have luck there for another decade,
Yeah, probably.
Quarterbacking, and he got some decent skill guys there, But he listens, but I think he stays at Alabama as long as he wants. I mean, he can pick his players. Yeah. He's not drafting third or fourth round guys. He's drafting first rounders every time he goes out on the recruiting trail.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, hey, let's finish up talking about Jerry Kill, shall we?
All right. Yeah.
All right. This guy, I have a soft spot for Jerry Kill. And just the whole situation that he's had to deal with, having epilepsy. My daughter has epilepsy and has the seizures, and it's been a whole big thing the last 4 years of her life. And I understand what he's going through and just how painful and just a pain in the backside that this can play on a person, emotionally, because I see it with my daughter. And when that came out, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you probably do need to step away, because your health is absolutely the most important thing to you.
Yes. No job is worth risking your health over. No job is.
Yeah. Now the job that he's done, you know what? I think it's been a fairly solid job. I mean, he's done great. I mean, considering it's Minnesota.
Oh yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean,
he's been a productive, winning coach at every program that he's been at, going all the way back to his days as a high school coach at Webb City and in Webb City, Missouri. I mean, when you look at those old Nebraska rosters in the 90s, he just had a pipeline of his kids going to Nebraska. And then I want to say he moved along to this small school called Pittsburgh State in Kansas. That's like Division II-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
won at a very high level there. He goes to Northern Illinois. He wins at a very high level there. He goes to Minnesota and, wins there. The guy just knows what he's doing, but he's not flashy, just stands on the sideline with the snow coming down, eating his dilly bar.
Exactly.
He's a football coach.
He is the epitome. I mean, if you look up a picture of a football coach, that's the picture that you should see is of Jerry Kill.
Mm-hmm.
And I have nothing but respect for that guy and what he does and what he's done. He's even said, he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. He goes, I might just be an assistant coach at a high school somewhere so I can just stay in the game. I mean, if that doesn't tell you that he's just a football coach, I don't know what else does. I mean, he's, considering what, Minnesota, they're not, that's a basketball school. To me, I mean, that's a basketball school. And what he's done is made football a little bit more relevant there. Now, who would be interested in that job?
Well, he's really pushing for the interim head coach. Is that Tracy Claeys?
Yeah, I believe that's him. Yeah.
All right, a lot of these guys, I get jumbled up in my mind now.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, he's advocating for Claeys to get it, and how Claeys had that team prepared to play Michigan. I don't know, based on the one game. It looks like a decent way to go. I mean, Minnesota's not a flashy program, so even if they hired Claeys for the full-time gig and it didn't go so well, not a whole lot of people are gonna recognize that. Personally, I'm gonna bring up the name that I brought up for Illinois. Willie Fritz.
Yeah.
I mean, mainly because I believe Fritz worked for Kill at Pittsburgh State. I believe if he didn't work for him at Pitt State, their paths at least, I think, crossed in some capacity.
At some point.
Yeah. So I mean, they have very similar resumes, I think, and Fritz kind of knows the area. He might, because of the contacts of having coached at Shawnee Mission High School, suburb of Kansas City, and being at Pitt State, and having coached, also at Central Missouri State. I think if a guy like Willie Fritz got that job, that would strike some fear into that Nebraska program, who they're in the same Big Ten division with, because Fritz could come in and I bet he could recruit Kansas City quite well.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Which if you now have Minnesota getting in that Kansas City marketplace for recruits, that puts not only puts pressure on Nebraska, but that's going to start to put some pressure on Bill Snyder to some extent. But I mean, he goes the JUCO route quite a bit more. And it also is going to put some pressure on Gary Pinkel in the SEC and in Missouri. So I think if they hired somebody like Fritz, I mean, that would be a good football move, and it would be a really good strategic move for them also.
Yeah, it'd be what I would call a program builder.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, because you have a solid guy who knows what he's doing, but he has contacts where he can go into where, like you said, Mizzou, Kansas, that area, and pick guys out of there where, maybe Missouri or, the Kansas schools are the only ones on their radar. Okay. And he makes an inroad there for Minnesota and puts, like you said, maybe puts the fear of God into Mike Riley there in Lincoln. So, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, to say the least. So we'll see what happens. And, would I like to see Minnesota become, a little bit more powerful in the Big Ten? Absolutely. I'd like to see every school and every conference, be good to great and have just dogfights every week. But I mean, that's my Pollyanna, thought right there. But, but bottom line is, what? Jerry Kill deserves all the accolades and all the respect from everybody for not only what he did at Minnesota, but just what he's done with his athletes over the years.
Yeah.
So to me, Seth, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Campus Pressbox. All of my writing appears there. You can also find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at S Merenbloom. That's SMERENBLOOM. You can find me filling in on this podcast from time to time, like I'm doing now. You can also hear me on the SEC 411.
All right. You can find me, Mike Wilson, also at Campus Pressbox, being the Pac-12 senior writer. I'm writing about things Pac-12 and every once in a while, things that aren't so Pac-12. But you can also find me on Twitter at Pigskin Opinion. And you can also email me at mike.wilson@campuspressbox.com for any questions or critiques or anything else that you might have for me. So for Seth and myself, we will see you guys next week.